Dopamine detox. Trick your mind to enjoy doing hard things. If you've ever bothered to keep in touch with any health and wellness trends going around, you've most likely heard of this one before. Dopamine detox is currently the biggest trend in Silicon Valley. It's been covered by BBC, Vice, Vox, Seattle Times and numerous other media houses. It keeps getting more traction as more and more people give it a try. The idea is to rewire your brain to actually enjoy doing hard things. Things that we all love to procrastinate over otherwise. Things we can't seem to enjoy anymore. So what exactly does dopamine detox do to your brain? Is it legit or just a scam? Let's find out. In this video, we break down everything you need to know about the dopamine detox. Let's begin. The basics. First, let's get into the basics. What is dopamine and what is a dopamine detox? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's essentially a chemical compound that fits on your nerve cells, often called the happy hormone because it induces feelings of happiness, making you feel elevated. The hormone sits on a very specific receptor on your brain cells that accepts only dopamine. The problem arises with tolerance. Whenever dopamine is released in your brain, you feel a high. But after a few times, that amount of dopamine will no longer be enough and you'll need more dopamine to get the same high. So, how does dopamine even work? If you're confused about how dopamine works, just think about it this way. Every text, notification, like, and DM means a little hit of dopamine. This dopamine overdose in the digital age can lead to addiction and overdose, which means mundane, boring activities might not be as rewarding. See, taking a picture for Instagram takes 10 minutes and receives likes in the hundreds, but buying a book requires time and focus, and the reward just isn't the same. This is where dopamine detox can actually help. Through this practice, you can basically rewire the reward system in your brain so that hard things become more pleasurable. Dopamine detox. The two major methods. There are basically two schools of thought when it comes to a dopamine detox, and there's one which is adopted by the Silicon Valley executives who take it a tad bit too far. The other one is guided by Dr. Cameron Sepper, a professor of psychiatry at UC San Francisco. Sepper's method stems from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy skills, and is centered around the age-old mindfulness approach. Dr. Sepper says in his guide that refraining from behaviors that release large amounts of dopamine allows your brain to recover and repair itself. However, you can't fast from a naturally occurring neurochemical. Instead, you cut down on problematic activities and make productive activities more enjoyable. The Silicon Valley approach, on the other hand, is a little hardcore. James Sinker, an entrepreneur from San Francisco, goes as far as to avoid eye contact because it might release dopamine. This can just be counterproductive. Dr. Cameron says that taking it too far may do more harm than good. In essence, the name dopamine fasting gives the wrong impression. In fact, Dr. Sepper goes as far as to name his guide Dopamine Fasting 2.0 to reinforce his point. How to do a dopamine detox. The first step is resetting the reward center in the brain, meaning tone down all activities that trigger a dopamine release. But what does that even mean? Every time your phone buzzes, it's a cue for dopamine release. Start by turning off the notification for an hour a day and then build on that. This way, there's less amount of dopamine being released. Starting small is what makes this practice a lifelong habit. Start by fasting just a few hours a day before going to sleep. Then take it a little bit further and try to fast for an entire day and ramp it up from there. It's essential that you do it in steps and make a habit out of it instead of a craze. No one says it's going to be easy, so don't go cold turkey on it. Build on it, and it's okay if you slip once or twice. Slow progress is still progress. The idea isn't to deprive yourself of dopamine, but bring your dopamine levels back to the pre-technology days when you'd have to do something worthwhile to feel good. Some people will swear on dopamine fasts, claiming they feel better, in touch with themselves, and can think more clearly. Some fasters describe it as the brain operating on a higher gear. Even though dopamine fasting itself has significant effects, a Reddit user pointed out that you could even go the extra mile if you were really into it. The technique is to basically go Pavlov on yourself. Firstly, you need to identify things you can't do or bail on in a few minutes or hours. Identify them and note them down. Secondly, you need to determine what gives you that dopamine hit. Whenever you do something boring, allow yourself a few minutes on social media or have a little snack. This way, your brain associates that action with happiness. This effect was initially described in the Pavlovian theory of conditioning. According to a study in 2019 named The Economic Effects of Facebook, dopamine fasting from Facebook helped reduce depressive symptoms by 17% and allowed students to regain 13.3 hours per week, time which can be spent better elsewhere. And just to give you an idea about what 13.3 hours a week can do in a year, it's the equivalent of 86.45 full 8-hour workdays. How insane is that to have almost 3 extra months a year? A quarter of a year. Now that's something that will help you grow. Final thoughts. Regardless of how much debate surrounds whether dopamine detox is legit or not, keep in mind that it has made a difference for thousands of people out there, and their stories are just a Google search away. That's a wrap for Dopamine Detox. Trick your mind to enjoy doing hard things. Do you think this is legit or just a passing fad? Let us know in the comments section below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for videos like this. See you in the next one.